So, why do Christians get persecuted? That's the topic for today's episode. I'm Mark Dickey from the Bridge radio station.
From Solid Ground Church, I'm Burt Miller.
From Hope Church, I'm Josh Dupiche.
This is the Why Do Christians podcast. Hey, welcome to the show. My name is Mark Dickey, and this week we're talking about persecution. And there's a lot of different directions you can go with it. And I feel like we should start with a kind of a, guys, when you hear the word persecution, what immediately comes to mind?
Oh, man. That's so tough because like my brain splits between cynicism and legitimate persecution. So
right.
So there's one part of me that's like, oh, the guy that gets angry that he didn't get a parking space. And the other one, like people being beaten and killed. And I'm not even saying that one isn't, I mean, we probably should talk about that, but
right.
I go to two different places.
I do the exact same thing. It's almost like there's maybe I'll call it American humor of recognizing that we don't have it that bad.
Sure.
And so we can, make it satire, like, oh, I'm being persecuted because I didn't get that parking space. But then, yeah, it's also a very real thing. How about you, Josh?
Ooh, yeah, I do the whole cynicism and legitimate thing, but I think maybe I go too far on the more legitimate side, so that even if something were to be said because of my faith or done, like I'm like, oh, it's not as bad as those guys over there. Like those guys are dying. Those guys are losing their families. Someone just said something to me. Like I'm not really being persecuted. So I tend to go there, which is not the case, right? That's not, because
I had a loved one that I was hanging out with 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. At some point, I was meeting with a loved one, and we were talking about persecution, and he just as an aside say, oh, it's not like Christians in America here who never have anything bad. And I don't agree with that sentiment, although I wouldn't apply it in the way, as of recording right now, there is genocide taking place in Nigeria, right? Like brothers and sisters in the faith being slain. Right. I wouldn't say that it's on that level whatsoever, but I think of it this way, like, have I or you, I mean, I can't speak for you, for me, just leading the church that I have, we have been denied service and basic some opportunities in places simply because we were a church.
Yeah.
I would consider that a form of persecution, but not in the way of, hey, I'm being dragged out into the street and I have to fear for my life, So I think of it like this, where, if we talk about like the idea of grief, right? Somebody loses a spouse or a child, and that is an intense grief. Someone only knows someone through, I don't know,
third party or
third party or fourth party, and if they lose them, and they might feel a sincere, legitimate sadness about that, right? Both are grief,
right?
But to completely different degrees. So it's not that, oh, no, this is grief and this isn't. Like, it's no, they both are, yet they might be different. And I think of it in that way.
I remember when I think of persecution in a serious way, when I think I was actually persecuted in my life as a Christian, my mind immediately goes back to college years. So I did not go to a Christian college, but I remember specifically in community college biology. And it was like, okay, we're going to dissect these animals and we're going to look at how they're the same and how they evolved. And this is exactly how everything happened. And I remember this like inner war of, okay, Mark, it doesn't matter what you believe. You have to mark what the teacher wants you, or like
face the consequences.
Yeah. And so, and I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I was in a class where I mentioned to the professor that the Bible was historically accurate, and then you made that joke.
Right. And then the professor said, "I defy your God." And then Mark was like, "Well, I'll argue it with you." And the professor was like, "Oh, well, if there's a God, then when I drop this piece of chalk, it'll fall on the floor. It won't fall on the floor and shatter. And so the professor dropped the piece of chalk, and it oddly rolled down his pant leg and gently onto the floor, and everyone, and then like a movie franchise was launched out of that.
You should write movies.
I'm pretty sure that movie exists.
Oh,
I think it's God's Not Dead, part 1, or 2.
Fun fact.
The trilogy. I forget how many there are at this point. Yeah.
Total pivot. But I was at a youth camp, and the speaker had he had like a music stand with like his message with scripture and stuff on it. And while he's speaking, he's talking about how like God shows up when you least expect it.
Yeah.
He nudges the music stand. A sheet of paper falls off and lands vertically on the stage, and everybody's just like,
starring Kevin Sorbo.
The guy's not even looking. Okay. He's like looking this way, and the paper's like back here, and everyone like freaks out, and he's like, you know that kid, that TikTok kid, who's just like, God.
Yeah.
All right, so persecution.
Yeah, bring it back.
Why does Christianity seem to attract people who are so inherently against it? Like we're in such a world where it's like, oh, let's all like play nice with each other, like coexist, everybody.
Yeah.
But why the hatred towards Christians?
Okay, so the cynic is going to say, and I'll give you why I disagree with it, but the cynic will say Christianity attracts the same amount of hatred that any other religion does, right? That essentially because human beings disagree about things, and they will say if you incorporate religion, it becomes all the more venomous. Now, the problem with that viewpoint is twofold. One, that's not really a religious thing. So the thought goes, well, listen, like if we just didn't have religion, everything would be better. But you just simply look at Soviet Russia or communist China that are completely godless and the atrocities that they're capable of. So that's just like, that's not a religion thing. But then when it comes to the idea of, Christians being more, or if it's argued Christians are persecuted sort of on par with everyone else, I think numerically that's just untrue. So for instance, there's a magazine that came out that did like a number of Christian martyrs in the 20th century alone. Like just okay, for those who were alive then, that doesn't seem that long ago, right? And it found that the number of people killed for the faith in just the 20th century was more than all previous centuries combined.
Wow.
Right?
Huh.
Yeah.
So no, there is a tremendous amount of bloodshed, and Jesus told us up front that it would be like that. Right? So in John 15, verses 18 through 20, he says, if the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own, but because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. So the theological answer would be, because we are not like the world hates us. I would also just argue that our religion spreads in a fundamentally different way. Christianity is based on an appeal to the gospel versus, if I were comparing it with the spread of Islam, which is brought by violence and the sword. They're very different things. So it would make sense to me that Christians are killed more because it is going up against different worldviews in usually a non-violent way, although certainly there are groups for whom that has been the exception.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it just, something you said just made me think, this goes back to to Genesis, to the fall, to a little bit beyond Adam and Eve, but Cain and Abel. It's just so what you said is the idea of that how the gospel spreads. It's really what's happening is the gospel's making a new man.
Yeah.
And now that man is contrasted to the old man.
New mankind is what you mean.
Yeah. And so you believe the gospel, you gain a new heart, a new living spirit. You are totally on a different trajectory in this world, in this life, in your thinking. And then I think what we're seeing is this battle of the kingdoms. This old kingdom being like, no, like we want to continue surviving. We want to do away with this new man that is destined, like prophesied to take over, and to crush the old way, and that will always be combative. That will always.
How
be
can it not though? Because I mean, you're literally, to embrace the gospel is a rejection of all kinds of things that are rooted in stability. Right? Think about where Jesus says, like, I haven't come to bring peace, but a sword. Right? Like father will turn against son, brother against brother. Right? To embrace the gospel, to say, all right, like I believe that Jesus died for me and rose from the dead, and I'm going to reject my family's religion. You're rejecting your family's religion. You may be rejecting the stability of community and those who are the heads of it. I heard a story back in seminary. I remember a guy was talking about how he was a missionary on a Native American reservation, and one of the guys that converted to Christianity decided he was going to be baptized, and so when the day of his baptism came, like, he invited his family, none of them would come, and he was immersed in water, and the only witness from his town was the chief, who just kind of stood at like a distance there watching it. And so he's baptized, Christians are celebrating, and then he goes home, and there's a group of men that he had grown up with there, and they basically held a knife to his throat and told him, get out of here because you've shamed our family. And I'm not saying that Native American spiritism is inherently violent. That's not my point. And certainly manifest destiny, the bloodshed and the forced conversion in the name of Christianity, I would argue it was not Christianity, but in the name of it is completely and utterly wrong. At the same time, there is this inherent insult to say, I'm going to forsake the gods of my ancestors. I'm going to forsake the gods of my family. The gospel in itself is offensive, right? To say that you are a sinner who needs a savior, and you will never be good enough on your own merit to earn heaven. That's an offensive statement that seems bigoted and exclusive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, Jesus was killed because he was not following the rules of the religion of his era.
Yeah, I mean, he was killed for claiming to be God.
Yeah.
And claiming a messiahship, sure. I mean, would you disagree with that? Yeah,
no, I wouldn't. But I think what Mark is getting at is you have this new king. And that's the difference. It's like, so we have governments, we have presidents, we have, what Jesus is claiming is, I have authority over all of it.
Yes.
Like, it all belongs to me, and I determine what happens. I mean, that, if there's any reason to fight, like, to say, oh, wait a second, you don't get to determine your own way in life, but I do, that brings this clash. And you know what I think about? I think about the Romans and when Christianity first comes into the picture, how they see it as this threat.
Yeah.
And in a sense, in a strange sense, they're not totally wrong.
Right.
It's not the fight that they're used to. It's not weapons.
It also undid their empire.
It did, right? Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It does. It completely, and then it's like, and it's just mind-boggling. And it wasn't through what the world was known, but they understood, oh, they're presenting a different king. And they're presenting a different way of life that will undo our gods, undo our financial systems. It will undo us.
Oh, yeah.
And it does.
Well, the world that our faith was birthed into, there's a reason Jesus tells them up front, hey, you're going to die for this. There were state-recognized religions.
Yeah.
And those religions were protected under Roman law. Christianity, when it was differentiated from Judaism, it ceased to be protected. Because they understood wars get fought over this stuff.
Yeah.
People, like you can lose power. Like things can go terribly wrong for us as an organization if we allow something that's not sanctioned to continue. But the other thing I think is also we probably should mention is when it comes to why do Christians get persecuted? Can we acknowledge that most people don't respond to correction generously? And what I mean by that is, if somebody comes along, and let's say they change their act and they're a different person, and I can see that they're living differently, and it convicts me about me. Normally, I think my human reaction is not to celebrate that. It's to find whatever I can that's wrong with it and try to get them away from it. Not because I believe the truth or don't believe the truth of what they're saying, but because I feel something about me, I want to get rid of whatever that is. And that's why I think Jesus, when he talks about this idea of like, man, or it's John where he says like, the lights come into the world and people love darkness rather than the light because their deeds were dark. The world is going to respond with resistance because it convicts them about them. I was talking with a young woman after church on it was Easter Sunday, and she was saying some things to me about my view and my church's view on marriage, gender, sexuality. And she said, it bothers me that you do all this, but you don't preach about Christian hatred. And I was curious, like, what she meant by that, because
what did she mean? Well,
what she meant was opposing her ideology, because we live in a time where to disagree is perceived as hatred.
Okay.
And it's spun in that way, man. If I don't roll with you, it means that I hate your guts. And I would just be really, really clear. Those of us who hold to traditional Christian values about marriage, sexuality, those types of things, we don't hate anybody. Like it's actually because of love that we stand on the truths that we stand on. It's not a, hey, I want to make someone's life worse or cast them down or viewing them as anything less than anyone else. It's, we believe that the God who loves us has created certain ways that life is to be lived, and to go outside of that actually goes against human flourishing and your flourishing. So that's why we take the view that we do. It's not that we hate or wish to oppress anyone. It's from a place of care.
I feel like I've heard from both sides that's persecution. That disagreement, that because I disagree with you, then I'm persecuting. Like you are persecuting me. I feel like I've heard Christians say that, kind of like they hold to traditional marriage, what the Bible says, and then when someone comes along and says, I don't want that, I like what I'm doing, they kind of sometimes see that as oppression or oppressive.
Right.
And I
wouldn't agree with that at all.
Yeah. And that really gets painted that way, and I think that's not a fair way. From what Burt's saying, it just makes sense that people who love what they are, when presented with something different, will not want to join you. Will not want to go along, and that doesn't mean that they're persecuting you.
So, what would you say the difference is between disagreement and persecution?
I think, Josh, if you've got a different thought, just off the top of my head, I think the difference would be this: disagreement is inevitable, and disagreement does not mean oppression, right? Persecution would be treating someone differently, denying them things because of their beliefs. So, for instance, disagreement is, hey, we don't see things
on this point.
Yeah, on this point, but I'll treat you with respect. I'll serve you in any way that I can. Right. I'll be there for you. That's very different from, okay, I don't agree with you religiously. I'm not going to let you rent my building. I don't agree with you religiously. I'm not going to let you eat in my restaurant. Right. I'm not going to let you have a house. I will confiscate your property. I don't agree with you religiously, so it's okay for me to beat you or malign you. It's okay for me to kill you. Like that there's a difference between we don't agree and persecution. I think we don't agree. You can have a not aligning in ideas but respect, versus persecution crosses into diminishment of consideration and behavior.
Yeah, you're less than. You're less than human to me at this point. Yeah, wow. It floods into the heart, a kind of attitude. Yeah. I like the way Jesus puts it, like how they'll call you names, and like that comes from the fact that person has a heart view about you now, that you are less than to them, you are deserving of destruction, and so from that spews all this language and all this. And instead of just let's engage the point. No, I want you gone. Like you're the problem.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. That creates.
John 16, verses 1 and 2, Jesus says, they will put you out of the synagogues. Indeed, the hour is coming when whoever kills you thinks he is offering service to God. So they'll begin to categorize you as the villain. And look, all of us have beliefs about right and wrong, right? There are I think it's, by the way, ultimately our we would say within the Christian viewpoint, our ultimate enemy and adversary, it's not a human being, it's Satan and the demonic and the forces of darkness. Although there are people who can walk in alignment with those things, every human being is made in the image of God and deserves consideration, compassion, and grace in a way that the demonic does not, because human beings carry the potential of redemption. Demons don't, right? But I say that to say, like, I think all of us believe some people are the bad guys. I mean, you just, okay.
Yeah.
The difference would be when it crosses a line into perhaps violence or denial of rights protected by law, or basic human dignity.
Yeah,
I think when that crosses, it goes from disagreement to persecution.
Gotcha. So I know the Bible talks about persecution as something that you can actually be blessed by. So that's kind of strange. Hey, here's this terrible thing we've spent 20 minutes talking about. By the way, it's going to happen and it's going to bless you.
Yeah. Yep. What Jesus says, I think in Matthew 5, that's the case, because if you're suffering for his name, you are blessed because your reward in heaven is great, right? It's that, and I think it's that you are so in line with his will, his word, that it's brought on you suffering that you wouldn't have otherwise experienced. And that's the thing about being Christian. Some people, I've had people say, like, you've probably heard the saying, like, Christianity is like is for people who are not that smart, like people that it's just the easier road. They're just trying to take control of you, and it is literally the opposite. It is the hardest road. You run into issues and into suffering that you would have otherwise never dealt with if you were just not a Christian. And so what I find Jesus saying is, hey, this means you're suffering in light of me. This is not just about you anymore. It's not just about what you're experiencing. In a sense, like, hey, it's the small thing. It's that you are suffering for the King. Like, you are suffering because of his word, because of what he said to do. And otherwise, you would have just eased on through this life.
I think that's hard for us in the West because we tend to view suffering as antithetical to God's provision, power, and presence.
Yeah.
So we believe, all right, if I'm suffering, God has not cared for me in some way. Where I think the global population doesn't see it that way, and certainly not the historic witness of the church, right? So you can find way back, even like one of the first stories of persecution is in Acts 5 when the disciples, like, they're flogged, like savagely beaten for their faith. In Acts 5, 43-42, it says that they left where they were beaten rejoicing because they had been counted worthy to suffer for the name. And the belief is that, man, if I'm persecuted, actually, no, God is blessing me because he's counting me worthy to experience life in the way that Christ did. And so he's actually preparing me for eternity. I don't naturally see it that way, but I know, and I've met people who come from things that it's not that they're not heartbreaking. It's that they're not defeated by them in the way that I might be, but by the grace of God. So, for instance, I remember years ago, I was over at my parents' house, and they had a couple missionaries from India who were there. And there, one gentleman, he was just talking about his experience, and he was giving us a little slideshow of things that had been happening, where he's trying to reach this community with the gospel. And just passing on, and here's so and so. He was my prayer partner until he was beaten to death last October. And there was no, like, let's take a moment and just pause and pray. And It's not that he didn't care about his friend being killed. He absolutely did.
Right.
But he understood to be this is part of what the faith is. We don't experience it that way here, particularly in America, because our religious freedoms are largely protected by law. Now, are there groups that try to get around that? 110%. And I've lived through that, yes. But it's not the same as there. Again, I'm not saying it's not persecution here. I'm saying it's different than there.
Yeah.
Right. But when it comes to the idea of suffering for Christ's sake, I mean, the epistles are just full of this. Paul talks about it. Peter talks about it. James talks about it. The author of Hebrews talks about it. Peter has this whole thing where he's like, look, don't be surprised when a fiery trial comes upon you as though something weird's happening to you. He's like, no, like this is part of what the faith is. God's actually making you like himself. He's preparing you for eternity. And what's wild to think about is that in the biblical worldview, that's actually an inherent part of being a Christian. Not optional. It's not, I'm a Christian and I might be persecuted. For them to do this, that's exactly what's going to happen.
So I want to transition into the conversation of like, okay, so if persecution is happening, like when am I supposed to, plant my feet and when am I supposed to go, okay, I'm out. I'm reminded in Luke 4, 28 and 29, Jesus is preaching. It's early in his ministry. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this. They got up, drove him out of the town, took him to the brow of the hill. Some translations, and in order to throw him off the cliff, but he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. Like they were going to kill him.
Yeah.
And then he did a Jesus Houdini.
Wouldn't call it that, but okay. Right.
But there were moments where like even Jesus was being persecuted. Is persecuted the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're trying to kill him. Yeah. Okay. Have I learned nothing in the last 25 minutes?
I just tune out when you guys talk.
But there are times to stick with it. And we see many times in scriptures where disciples are killed for their faith. And then there's times to say, I'm out, run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely precedent for that. Like you can find 2 occasions in Acts that I'm aware of where Paul gets out of Dodge because people want to kill him. One time, it goes so far as it's in Acts 9 where he's lowered down a wall in a basket hidden like to be outside the city because, word of an assassination plot has come. As far as like when not to run, I think the best answer to that is whatever Josh Dupiche says.
Run, Josh.
Run. That is the answer. Run. But yeah, I think what I find in the scripture is the expectation is that you will try to protect your life. Like that's
what you should be doing.
That's right. Yeah. Like it's awkward if you make you being a martyr the thing in the sense, right? The goal. It's that that right. Paul leaves. Everyone is trying to escape. While person. Now there are times to stay, and we do find that I think in the scriptures. I think of the apostles who stayed in Jerusalem while everybody else is running. There are times where you have responsibilities to those underneath you. Like me as a pastor, I think, okay, if widespread persecution broke out, I first have my responsibility to the church. Like I have to consider the people before I'm like the first out the door. Like, right? So you have that. Also, I think there's this strange. I want to say it's in Hebrews where the author says that like there was a chance for people to get away and they chose not to. Mm-hmm. They were being held because of their faith, and had they said the right statements, had they said they could have escaped, and he said no, they chose a better reward. So in that sense, it's not like they had the freedom to escape. They were stuck and they chose to, you know what, I'm going to double down in my faith here, because I want this reward that's coming for me, like that God has for me. And in that sense, then.
Well, I just wonder, like, how much of it is clear calling, though.
Gotcha.
So like, all right, Paul, who I mentioned, flees, and yet Acts starts to wind down with a clear calling to go to Jerusalem so that he can be arrested, so that he can be shipped off to Rome to bring the gospel there. And you have all these lead-ins in the story of people warning him, hey, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. But he goes because he believes the Lord has called him there. And so there's no shortage of like, I know this is what God wants for me, right? In the same way, Acts is also, is it 2 or 3 stories where Peter is delivered from prison. Like he is in jail, and the prison doors fling open and he walks out, right? And church tradition tells us about Peter's martyrdom, and it's not in the Bible, it's purely a tradition. But the story goes that while he was in Rome, word got to him, and this would have been during the reign of Nero, I think, word got to him that they were trying to arrest and kill him. And so Peter got out of the city. And as he was leaving, the story goes that he had a vision of Christ carrying his cross towards Rome. And Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? To which Jesus in the vision said, to Rome, Peter, to die. And he understood this to be a fulfillment of what Jesus prophesied to him at the end of the Gospel of John. Like, when you're old, they'll take your hands and lead you where you don't want to go. And so he turned around and went back to the city and was ultimately killed there. That came from what I think, if it's true, that again, that would be a clear leading of the Lord to stay. And maybe where like the space I would be comfortable occupying is, maybe comfortable isn't the word, but what I can wrap my head around is do whatever you can to get out of there. Preserve life, preserve life, preserve life. But there may be a time where the Lord says, stay. And it's on you to do that. And maybe he wants to do something miraculous that everyone can see. Maybe he doesn't. God's work is not on you. Obedience is on you. And my prayer, by the way, is that no one listening to this has to make that choice. But we live in a world where it's possible.
I have so many thoughts.
Go, please.
So many thoughts. Man. The text I was thinking about while you were saying that is like Hebrews 10, and some of the things it says are just so.
Bring it on, man. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just read it. It says, but he says, but I recall the former days after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings. It says sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. And I think that connects with what I want to say, that whichever direction you're going to go in, I think you have to be driven by your commitment to Christ. So what I get from that text is you saw other believers who were being persecuted, and in your faith, in your commitment to Christ, you thought, I want to be partnering to help that believer, but that also means that I'm now going to have my stuff taken and I'm going to come under persecution. And that means I don't get to run, right? That means I'm binding myself to this. And that's because you have this view of this better possession. And if that's your choice, then commit to Christ on that choice. But at the same time, I do see that other choice, that if you're choosing to run, choose to run because of your commitment to Christ, not because like, I just want to save my life. Like, I just want to live. I don't want to die. I don't want to, and that's not a bad thing to want. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, there needs to be this deeper commitment to the faith that, like, right, I'm doing what Christ wants. I'm like me living will get to continue, allow me to continue the faith, like allow me to do more. That I guess what I'm fighting is this, just the thought that I just want to live, like, because I want to enjoy my days. And I kind of feel like that takes away from.
Yeah, but is it? I don't know. Like,
yeah, I could be going too far.
Well, I don't know. So, like, look, the man who's drowning, who calls out for a lifeguard, is he selfish in doing so?
Absolutely not. Right.
No, right? I mean, like to want to live is not a bad thing.
Nope.
So maybe the posture is, all right, I adopt one of obedience, whether that is to go or stay. But like, I don't know. I mean, certainly there's pastors like whoever wishes to save their life will lose it, and there's living like this. Lord, my hand is open. At the same time, I think about Jesus, where he, in his hour of need, he says, Father, if it is possible for this cup to pass.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not a lack of righteousness. Like, in fact, Jesus didn't just not sin. He did everything right. So I don't think the scripture portrays as, hey, if you want to not die, I don't think it portrays it as like a lack of righteousness or a lack of faithfulness to God.
Wow.
But the value set maybe is one more of, but I don't live for this world. And so, like, with the idea, like in the Hebrews 10 passage of the, like you're looking forward to a greater place. That's true. And so that's why you can give up the stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what I'm fighting. Just I don't want to be persecuted. I don't want to suffer. I want to just live a good, like, life. Like, I just want to have good experiences and just ease through things. But what I don't think I don't think that's the picture presented in scripture.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you know, it's almost like have you ever been in church or listening to a sermon or something like that, and it's on say like a passage like Jesus and the rich young ruler, right? Where, all right, the guy comes to Jesus, what I need to do to be saved, and Jesus goes, oh, I'll keep the law. And he goes, I've done that. He goes, okay, sell all your stuff and give all the money away to the poor, and then come and follow me. And so the guy leaves dejected, right?
Yeah.
And I've had this response in immaturity in the past where I've heard that story. I'd be like, oh, wow, God, I hope you never call me to that. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But what's in that heart there? What's in the heart there is I don't want to lose my stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means stuff has a thing in my heart.
Yeah.
Oh, Siri agrees. like what's in my heart means that, like, stuff occupies more of a prominence than it should.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to the idea of losing stuff here, if I'm living with this mindset, I need to get, keep, that might not be the right way. Although it's not wrong to want to not suffer and die.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I guess what I'm getting at is, like, what is, like, I know, talking for me here, like, my original, my number one thought, things are getting hard. Like, I just don't want it this difficult. Like, I want it easier. But I specifically, we're talking about persecution. I think I need to have a different view that I am being blessed. How do I double down on this blessing first before I get myself out of it?
Wow.
Right? Like, and that's where I guess I'm trying to go. Like, how do I, like, are there other people going through this that I could double down and partner with them first before my first thought? I guess that's what I would say, Christian. Before your first thought is get out of Dodge, like, save yourself. Like, consider the reward. Consider the calling of the King. Like, consider his other people. Like, and I want to say this. I'm afraid that if I consider that so much, I don't know if I'd run. Like,
Bro, I'm reminded of, okay, so there's a quote from Tertullian that said, the blood of the martyrs is seed. And the idea is the faith tends to take root most powerfully where blood has been shed. And it's a brutal reality.
Oof.
I had a friend who, so it's a friend of a friend, was from a place in Africa that was predominantly under Islam, and he had converted to the faith and wanted to go back to bring the gospel to them. And he was telling my friend Sean, I'm going to go back and do this. And my friend Sean said to him, he was like, well, are you not concerned? Like, they could kill you for this.
Yeah.
And his response was, oh, Sean, I fully expect to die. But I think that's what it will take to get them to receive Christ.
Wow.
Completely different way of looking at life in the world. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. That's so good.
Wow.
Say that again. The thing about the bloodshed. What was that line?
Oh, so you're telling him the blood of the martyrs is seed. The idea is, like, in order for the faith to grow somewhere, it will probably take the bloodshed of Christians.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, keeping with the metaphor, there's a lot of different ways that blood can be shed. And basically, I heard someone say true worship costs something. They were referencing like the sacrifice of an animal or the sacrifice of anything.
David. Yeah.
And that I'm just seeing that parallel there, that like your faith, your worship of the Lord will cost you your reputation, your comfort.
Yeah.
It could. Odds are very, very in that favor. But yeah, that's good. Well, hey, if we have missed anything on the concept of persecution, and I feel like we could have gone so many other directions with this, let us know in the comments or send us an email, podcast@wearethebridge.org. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, we are on YouTube. If you're listening to this, hop on youtube.com in the search bar at Why Do Christians and subscribe to the channel, because the way that these algorithms work is that the more people that see it, more people like you will get recommended this content. And so in the simplest way, you are helping. You're not just making our little subscriber number go up, but you are helping your immediate circle and people who watch videos like you to find the channel. And we're hoping more and more people can have access to this huge library that is the Why Do Christians podcast. So thanks for listening.